Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Mrs. Harlow's Quarantine Reads. Today's quarantine read is Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. This book is a sequel to a book called Vicious. I read that sometime last year. And it is about Victor Vale and Eli Cardale. They are med students, and they are trying to prove the existence of what are known as EOs, extraordinaries. In this setting, it's people who have superpowers. And as they are trying to prove their existence, they discover how to become EOs themselves and go through with it, which means that they both die, only to be resuscitated, and then their powers are matched by what their final thoughts were as they were dying. What I super love about this series is that V.E. Schwab challenged herself to write a book where there were no good guys. And so all through this series, there's only villains. There's only bad guys. And that's fascinating because you still care about them and you still want them to win. You still want them to succeed, whatever it is they're doing, even though it's terrible. And so I thought, that's just brilliant. She makes you reassess your definitions of what makes an antagonist and what makes a protagonist. Let's talk a little bit about what makes a protagonist or an antagonist. The protagonist is the principal character in a literary work, a leader or a champion. This is the main character of the story you're reading, the person we follow along with and root for in their endeavors to do whatever it is they're trying to do. And oftentimes we do think of this person as the good guy, the person you care about in the story. Protagonist examples include Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen, Luke Skywalker, all just the main characters of their stories. But they all also happen to be quote-unquote good guys. But as is the case in Vengeful, your protagonist isn't always a good guy. In this case, they would be an anti-hero, someone who lacks the conventional heroic qualities of a protagonist, or whose actions are questionable. In this case, you want to think about Deadpool, quintessential anti-hero. Riddick from Pitch Black and the Chronicles of Riddick is another really wonderful example of an anti-hero. Even Wolverine has some very serious anti-hero moments, and that's what V.E. Schwab is really experimenting with in this book series. That brings us to the antagonist. This is a character or element of the story that acts in opposition to the protagonist and what they're trying to achieve. They're what's keeping that main character from doing what they need to do. Obviously, Scar is a really great example of an antagonist, a quintessential bad guy in and of himself, and also my favorite Disney villain. But other good examples of antagonists are Voldemort, Darth Vader, and Mr. Darcy. As much as we may love him, he is in fact the antagonist to Elizabeth Bennet's protagonist. Now then, back to V.E. Schwab. So I am a little obsessed with the series. I'm also just a little obsessed with V.E. Schwab's writing. I love all of her books so far. And, I talked about Tunnel of Bones, which is Victoria Schwab because it's her YA writing, but it is the same author, and I think she's just very brilliant, and so I will scream and foam at the mouth about her. I would, if we owned this, it would definitely be an adult fiction. This is probably the most adult of her writing that I've read so far. There is lots of graphic depictions of violence. Remember, all bad guys. There's actually a bit of fairly graphic sex as well, which was new territory. And then lots of foul language. So definitely an adult read, even though I know lots of places like to sell her stuff as YA regardless of which name she's writing under. This is not YA. Definitely not. That being said, I really enjoyed it. I read it in a few days. Same with the first one. It's very fast-paced. She also does some really interesting things with non-linear storytelling, which means that instead of going chronologically in the order of events, she takes you into moments in time over the last 5 years in the case of this book. So one chapter will say 2 days ago, and then the next chapter will say 5 years ago, and you just kind of bounce around from these moments to moments until the full plot kind of comes together and everything makes sense. It's a really interesting, complex way to tell a story, and I loved it. I want to try and do it myself someday. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. And so yeah, I'm kind of sad because now I don't have any more adult fiction to read by her. I've now read it all. So I still have like 3 YA books of hers to read. So hopefully I can get to those soon. If you guys haven't yet, please hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you've been reading and what you've been up to. And I'll be back again soon with another quarantine read.